If you're tired of the standard business and marketing fundamentals, frameworks, and funnels, you need a little mischief. Get ready to turn up the volume on the CEO Mischief Maker podcast, where you access conversations with seasoned business owners who have smashed through mindset barriers, innovated the standard boring business and marketing playbooks, and executed future-paced strategies with bleeding-edge tools and tactics to micro-fail their way into massive success and growth. We are Mindset Impact Strategic Catalysts helping innovative entrepreneurs focus. We are CEO Mischief Makers. Ready to make a little mischief? Hey, welcome to the conversation, CEO Mischief Makers. One of my absolute favorite people on the planet is here with me today. Seriously, I just met this woman, in April? And feel so connected to her, not just because she lives in my backyard, not my literal backyard, but in my area, but also because she's an incredible human being. So Lauren Johnson, welcome to the conversation. How you doing?
Oh, thank you so much. I seriously, the feeling is mutual. I was so connected when I got the chance to meet you and spend more time with you. And I am so pumped to be here. So pumped and feeling good.
Yay. Well, you need to be feeling good because at the time of this recording, you're kind of getting ready to pop, right? How far along are you in your pregnancy?
I'm about 6.5 months.
Okay. You got a little time then. You're good.
Yep. A little bit of time left.
Yes. So besides what I just shared and the fact that you're expecting a beautiful little boy, tell us about yourself. I mean, tell people about who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So, oh man, I am many things. I am a daughter, a sister, a wife, a friend, a soon-to-be mom. But for my career, I am a mental performance coach and speaker. And what that means is that I actually help all of my athletes and business CEOs, executives, and teams. What I do is I help them to develop a high performance mindset. And what that means is that, especially for instance, before I started my own consulting company in 2021, I worked for the New York Yankees as their mental conditioning coordinator. And I was working with some of the best talent in the world. But the thing about, no matter how talented you are, no matter how many skills that you have, one of the things that can impact performance is our mind, how we interpret adversities, how we interpret obstacles, how we respond to the things that are, getting in our way, whether it's an external factor, like another team, like an outside circumstance, or an internal one, our own self-talk, our own limitations, fears, and belief systems. And so it's my job to come in and help to create the mental skills that allow you to show up at your best, regardless of circumstance.
Wow. So you can tell when we talk about mindset today, I have a feeling you're going to need to put this on repeat a few times because you're going to get some stuff here that you're going to need to really unpack. And the first one, I mean, just the reason I was so drawn to you because we met at a conference, Mike Kim's conference. You are the brand, and one of the things you said. Mindset isn't everything, but it impacts everything. I remember it word for word, a couple months later. Tell me for yourself, especially in athletics and in business, what was one of the first mindset shifts you had to make that you can remember that really made you realize the potential that you had?
No, this is a really good point. And I mean, I've had many of these and I still have them. Yeah. And I think that distinction is so important about mindset because I'm a mental performance coach and I study this. People, often say like, oh, Lauren, mindset is everything. And it's not. Because can you imagine if I walked into a room with all of our coaches from the Yankees, whether they're a manager, a pitching coach, a hitting coach, a catching coach, there are stats guys. And I said, mindset is everything. No, because if that were the case, then I would be a major leaguer, but I'm not. And there's a good reason for that. And so what it does is it really enhances your abilities in whatever it is that you do. And the first time I recognized this was actually, I played collegiate soccer. And I realized that actually I was the thing getting in the way. And when people say, why do you love what you do? It was because I was the athlete that needed it. I was the one who constantly beat myself up. I was the one that set such high expectations that like I couldn't even reach. It was this perfectionism that I was so drawn to. And really what that is it's a protective mechanism to protect us from shame. Is that if I'm perfect, then I won't be ashamed if I'm anything less, or at least if I strive for that. And so what I realized was that actually what created progress was not perfection. It was showing up as the best version of you in that moment. And every moment's going to look different depending on what you're dealing with in that moment. And so for me, I've had my own major obstacles in my life. And let me tell you, my ability to show up at my best looked so different based on the things that were going on either in my life, internally, externally, or otherwise. And so that was a big shift for me. And I really saw this also when I started my own company. And it's this fear of like, where's my next paycheck coming from?
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the shifts I had to make, again, one of the things I teach a lot of my athletes and my executives is, how do you define success? A lot of us go to that outcome, right? We go to, getting a hit, hitting a home run, making $1 million, whatever that is. But the question then becomes, which there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, nothing wrong with having those outcomes. But the question is, how do we put our mind in the best position to get them? And it's not by hyper focusing on them during the moment. And so the question becomes, okay, if that couldn't be success, what would success be? I.e., what is within your control? And so I remember when I started my business, the things that I recognized that were within my control that often led to that success was reading, writing, and doing excellent work. Excellent work. When I did those three things, that typically led to the cash flow. It led to people wanting to work with me. And so for anybody out there, I know that this was something that, helped me in my own business. And like I said, I help a lot of my athletes and business personnel in this as well, is can we separate? Outcomes are great. We need it because if you don't have a direction, any direction will do. So we need to find a direction. Then we need to go, okay, how would success be defined within our control? Because whether or not I make money is not fully within my control. That's also outside, and that is impacted by other people's decisions, which I have no control over.
So what I hear you saying is, even though we have a goal of whatever it might be the dollar amount in our business, the number of clients, the whatever those things are, the number of hits for a ball player, whatever. But instead of just focusing on that goal at the moment that I'm going into my business to do something. So let's say I'm going into a sales call, or I'm going into up to the bat to up to the plate to bat, or whatever. Instead of focusing just on that goal, if I focus on the broken down pieces that will make me better when I show up to that place, with that in mind, that's my ultimate goal, but I'm focusing on these pieces that when I break them down, they make me better when I show up to that place. Is that what you mean when you talk about mindset?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a really good example of this. I was working with one of our athletes at the Yankees, and I was working with one of our affiliates. And I get to the park, and I knew this player was going to find me because he's a hitter and he was in a slump. So essentially what that means is that he was 0 for 15. So for every at bat, the last 15 at bats, he struck out or got out. And that's not good for a hitter. Like, he's not happy about this, right? So he's starting to kind of freak out about it. Yeah. And so he comes up to me and he's like, Lauren, I've tried everything. I saw my hitting coaches. I saw my stats guys. I saw my strength coaches. I'm trying everything and nothing's working. And I paused him and I said, how do you define success? And he goes, oh, well, getting a hit. And I said, okay, I'm going to challenge that. I said, is it true that you can do everything right at the plate and still get out? And he goes, yeah. And I said, isn't it also true that you could do everything wrong at the plate and still get out? And he said, yes. I said, so results alone won't make you better. Executing the right things will. And a lot of times we fall into this trap, this mental bias called resulting, where we qualify the decisions we make based on their outcomes or results. And so, AKA, if I got a good result, it must be because I did something well. Or If I got a bad result, it must be because I did something right. But if we don't actually evaluate the decisions we make and separate what's within our control, what's without of our control, and where luck may have played a factor, we could be making changes based on the wrong things, which is exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so I paused him and I said, okay, let's pretend that cannot be your definition. So after the ball leaves the bat, you do everything within your control. I said, everything before then, what would those things be? If you did 1, 2, or 3 things within your control that you're like, okay, I did my job, regardless of what happened on the other side, that you would feel good about it, what would those 3 things be? And it took him a second to realize this. And he finally goes, oh, okay. All right, I got 3 things. So we came up with the first one was being on time. He's like, man, when I'm on time at the plate, I'm dangerous. I said, great, being on time. Awesome. Number 2, he said, being committed to my plan at the plate, meaning I'm not just going to swing at any pitch that's thrown at me. I am going to be committed and disciplined on the plan that I choose. So I'm only swinging at the pitches that I'm looking for. Great. And then number 3, he said, having an external focus. He goes, typically when I'm too internally focusing on what my hands are doing, what my feet are doing, and my legs, he's like, I get in my head and it becomes robotic. I'm like, great. So focusing on where you want to hit it or your target. He said, yep. So what we're doing is now we're taking success as being the things within your control that you can execute. If you're going to a sales meeting, it is not within your control to get somebody to sign on the dotted line or hand over their credit card.
Yeah.
But it is your job to give the best pitch you can give. It is your job to understand your client and their needs so well that you can speak to them in those meetings. And so if you can do those things, that is what success is. And so it's important to redefine what that means for you. And then if it doesn't elicit the result you want, or it does, okay, it's not win or learn, it's win or lose, you learn. And so win or lose, evaluate it and ask yourself, what was in my control that may have led to the result? What was outside of my control that may have impacted those results? And where might have luck played a factor? When we can understand those things, then we can take that information and apply it to our next attempt.
Absolutely. I mean, so I'm going to bring this back to you. And I love how you brought it into business and making a sale, let's say, from getting the sign on the dotted line and all that stuff. So I've been serving people through sales since 1990. My first job was with Jenny Craig Weight Loss Centers, and they have a screaming amazing sales training process. Really, really good. I was very, very lucky straight out of college to go straight into this job and be trained on how to evaluate people and help them come to decisions. But really, if I take that to now, and I know lots of people who might be listening to this might be agency owners or service providers or things like that. So if you look at that and you think, okay, there's something that's counterintuitive when you go into a sales call and you have zero expectations of the outcome. That zero expectations, for me at least, gives me so much power because it allows me to show up very differently. And I increase my sales percentage when I do that, because I'm not trying to make them fit something that I think they should do with my preconceived notions. I'm actually listening and paying attention. And actually what you just said, impacting the things that I actually have control over. Those are the only things I have control over. I have no control if all of a sudden at the end of the call, they go, oh, well, gosh, I need to check with my husband, right? All those things that we dread when that might happen. But actually, if you listen in the beginning, you're going to hear hints of things that you need to handle before you get to that point. But if you're following a script and you're following a direction, you're like, no, I want to get them here. You're not listening to those things and you're going to get blindsided by them. So yes, if you focus on just those things that you can control, oh my gosh, it makes all that. When I finally had no expectations in any sales calls that I have, it actually almost doubled my sales closing percentage when I did that. Because it's all I can do.
And you know why? It's because you're building relationships. Yeah. And there's nothing people want to buy from people they trust, from people that they have relationships with. And when you're coming at it like, I have to make this sale, doesn't mean you don't want to. But when you come at it like that, you're coming it from a place of scarcity. Versus when you come from a place of abundance and you're really wanting to help somebody, And one of the things within, like when I'm meeting with people is that, and it's an important core value of my company, is integrity and alignment.
Yeah.
I am not in my integrity if I'm trying to sell something I know they don't need. Like if I realize somebody comes to me and they have a clinical issue and it's not a mental performance issue, or maybe it's both, I would not be in alignment or in my integrity without having that conversation about, number one, what I think they need the most. Number two, the order of that. Because if I don't, then what am I doing? I'm running them in a circle. If the goal is to solve a problem, especially, I mean, that's what we're doing when we're selling something, is that it has to be in integrity and alignment. And guess what? All of us know how that feels when somebody is trying to sell you something you really don't need or is not within your alignment. You can sniff out the BS like that. Everybody can. And so I do think that one of those pieces of success that you just touched on that I think is so important within our control is to understand why you're selling this. What is the reason? How does it help the person you're talking to? What does it relieve for them? Because if the only thing that you care about is getting the sale for yourself, it's going to come across loud and clear to the customer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, this is incredible. And I know all of these things we could talk about forever. Is there a particular, you mentioned in the beginning how you really realized when you had to make that shift about, your mindset issues in the beginning. Is there a particular mindset hurdle you have overcome that, especially with your business now, that really allowed you to look at it completely differently and change not just the outcomes, but this whole package of your business? Is there a particular mindset hurdle that you were up against that you had to overcome?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a hurdle I've had to face before in athletics. And I saw it show up in my business. And it's something that I still will have to work on and keep an eye on. And when I was little, I've played soccer since I was 5. So since I was really little, and my dad was very into sports. Like it was what we bonded over. And my brother and I were always very athletic, and that's how my dad was. And I didn't realize this, but there was a connection between my childhood and how driven I was. And while I think some of that is just part of me, I realized that I had another driving force behind why at the collegiate level, I put myself through 2 days for no reason, not for no reason. I had a reason, but I would do that on my own. On the weekends, I wasn't out partying. I was at the gym. And then I would be coming home at 10 o'clock from the gym to pick people up from their parties and BDD. And so I look back and I took it so seriously. And what I realized is that I had what I now call temporary worthiness, where I attached my worth to my outcomes in such a way that when I was doing well, I was on top of the world. But when I wasn't, I felt worthless. And so I started to be curious about this pattern because I was associating, like, I know how I felt. And it wasn't the typical disappointment. Oh, I'm upset. Oh, it's a failure. It was, I am a failure. I am ashamed. And it was almost like this punishment that well, you're not as good as you can be, go do more.
Yeah.
And what I realized was that actually came from my interpretation of my father's love as a child. Is I got a lot of praise and a lot of love around succeeding in athletics. And so as a kid, I associated, oh, if I'm successful in sports, I will be loved.
Yeah.
And it's funny because as I've gotten older, I recognize how ridiculous of a thought that was. But as an adult, I still seek to my own love for myself through my successes.
Yeah.
And so when I'm doing well, I feel like I can really love myself. And when I'm not, I struggle to. And so when I started to learn this about myself, the shift I've had to make in business, my first year in business was amazing. I had great success. But you know what the problem was? I sacrificed everything else to get it.
Yeah.
And now that I'm realizing this, especially towards the end of last year. And I think I had 10 keynotes in December alone and like traveling all different places. I mean, it was insane.
Right.
And I can run myself into the ground quite easily. And so I think that by recognizing this, it's caused me to look at it and take a shift and go, all right, Lauren, we can't do this again. What are we going to do instead? And I think now that I've created and looked at sustainability and how I identify with my outcomes, I've been able to make that shift and make better decisions based on it.
So CEO Mischief Makers listening, please hone in on a couple, obviously that whole story, but a couple of pieces out of it that I think are vital in being able to have this kind of breakthrough, to have this kind of shift. And number one is curiosity. You had to look at that and actually be open and be curious as to where it was coming from, not just judging and staying in that judgment, but coming and stepping back and looking into that process and being curious as to where it came from and why this keeps happening. And I love that because I agree 100%. You and I have already talked about that in previous conversations. But then the next thing is, besides that curiosity, the next thing is the identity. I think I agree. My biggest shift was when I finally allowed myself to no longer identify with the success or non-success of my business. That I didn't say I'm a success because my business is a success, or I'm good, or I'm bad, or I must be a failure, or I am statements in relation to any outcome outside of myself. That was the first time when I finally realized that. And that wasn't until like 2012, 11, 12, and I had been in business since 2003. So that was right after the wonderful recession of 2008 and, all that stuff. And I really took that identity to heart. And it's like, it's me. It's like, well, no, the whole freaking world is on fire. So it's okay. You cannot identify with that and kind of let go of it and just do what you got to do to fix it. Right. But those two things I think are vital. Curiosity from where it's coming from. And you need a certain distance from it in order to be curious, right? You need to get out of that judgment in order to be able to apply curiosity. And then don't identify with it.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, but I feel like we can tackle that in tools and strategies.
Yes. So you better tune in on Friday, people, because that's what we're going to get into. So yeah, I mean, we could talk forever about mindset because it is your gig. It's your thing. And you are so incredibly good at it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, it's, I always say that people that are good at it are also the ones that have to work at it every single day. It's like anything else. It's not like I know this and therefore I've never had mindset issues. No, I am like everybody else. I do not give something to a client that I work with that I haven't already proven and done myself. Because it's one thing to read the research. It's one thing to understand the theories, but it's another thing to apply them, because the truth is we don't live in theory. We don't live in the scientific study where there are control groups and all of that. And so while theories are great, not all of us fit into them exactly as they are written. So the only way to know kind of how to navigate the boundaries of that is by putting yourself in that position yourself.
Okay, hold on. If your mindset was shifted, you were inspired to innovate, and you were spurred into action, don't just move on with your day. Focus, my friend, and take a few minutes to visit CEOmischiefmaker.com to learn more about the value that was shared with you today. Please act now and create some CEO mischief of your own.